May 6, 1864. The wilderness, Virginia. The forest is burning, not in any clean, controlled sense. Burning the way hell burns, low and patient and indiscriminate. Smoke rising through the tangle of scrub oak and second-growth pine until the air itself becomes a weapon. A soldier from the 4th Texas crouches behind a fallen tree and can see perhaps 20 feet in any direction. He does not know where the Union line is. He does not know where his own regiment ends. He knows only the sound, a continuous, unbroken, tearing canvas roar of 58 caliber Minié balls shredding through underbrush, and the smell, sulfur and black powder and something else underneath it, something sweet and terrible that every man who has served more than one campaign already recognizes as the smell of blood going stale in Virginia clay. Robert E. Lee is sitting on his horse traveler at the edge of the plank road, and he is not calm. He is watching his entire center collapse. For 2 days, he has built this trap with the precision of a chess master who has memorized every square of the board. He has positioned 5 of the finest military mines in the Confederate States of America across 70 square miles of the most difficult terrain on the North American continent. He has studied this forest. He has fought here before at Chancellorsville the previous year, and he knows what this ground does to an army, how it blinds cavalry, how it silences artillery, how it breaks formations into fragments and fragments into chaos. He designed a plan that used those qualities as weapons, and it is working, has been working, was working brilliantly up until approximately 90 minutes ago, when everything began to come apart in the exact same way Lee feared most. The Confederate center is in full rout. Ambrose Powell Hill's 3rd Corps, 12,000 men who marched through the night and fought through the day, is streaming backward down the Orange Plank Road in the kind of disorder that officers' nightmares are made of. Winfield Scott Hancock's Union 2nd Corps, 20,000 strong and the most powerful fighting formation in the Army of the Potomac, is pouring through the gap. Union soldiers are whooping. They can smell it. They believe they have broken Lee's army. And standing in that gap between the breaking and the broken is one fact that will determine the outcome of the entire war. James Longstreet has not yet arrived. To understand what that means, to understand why it matters so enormously, you have to go back 4 days to the top of a mountain, to the moment when Robert E. Lee looked south and understood exactly what was coming for him. Clark Mountain, Virginia, May 2nd, 1864. The air up here is clean, cleaner than anything in the Army of Northern Virginia has breathed in months, and Lee stands among his senior commanders with a pair of field glasses pressed to his eyes, watching the far side of the Rapidan River. Word has come that Ulysses S. Grant has crossed. The entire Army of the Potomac is moving. 102,000 men, possibly as many as 118,000 when additional units are counted, are streaming south through the Virginia countryside, and they are led by a general unlike any Lee has faced before. This is not George McClellan, who counted every rifle twice before he would move a single corps. This is not Ambrose Burnside, who stumbled into Fredericksburg and threw his army at Lee's stone walls, like a man throwing himself against a locked door. This is not Joe Hooker, who came to Chancellorsville with the finest army on earth, and then lost his nerve inside his own headquarters while Jackson was dismantling his flank. Grant does not lose his nerve. Grant does not retreat. Grant has the cold arithmetic of the West behind him. Vicksburg, Fort Donelson, Shiloh, the willingness to spend lives because he understands that the side with more lives to spend will eventually win. Lee understands this about Grant before they have fired a single shot at each other. And so Lee's plan cannot be the kind of plan he built at Chancellorsville, the elegant, sweeping, flanking movement that destroyed a Union army and sent it fleeing back across the Rappahannock with its wagons and its dignity scattered across the Virginia countryside. He cannot fight that battle anymore. He has 61,000 men. Grant has more than twice that number. He cannot fight the war of maneuver, the war of audacity, the war he has been fighting brilliantly for 3 years. He has to fight a different war now. He has to fight the wilderness. The plan is deceptively simple in outline, catastrophically difficult in execution. Lee will let Grant cross the Rapidan uncontested. He will let the Great Blue Army move south into the forest, into that 70-square-mile tangle of second-growth timber and creek beds and abandoned farms called the Wilderness, where the Union's advantages in artillery and numbers mean almost nothing. Then he will strike on two parallel roads. Richard Ewell's 2nd Corps will attack along the Orange Turnpike to the north. Ambrose Powell Hill's 3rd Corps will strike along the Orange Plank Road to the south. They are outnumbered, badly outnumbered, but the forest will neutralize the disparity. And then, before Grant can concentrate his forces and overwhelm them, James Longstreet's 1st Corps will arrive from Gordonsville, having covered approximately 27 miles of Virginia road, and the 3 corps together will hit the Union Army at its weakest point when it is still trying to figure out which direction the firing is coming from. It is a dangerous plan. It requires Longstreet to arrive on time. It requires Ewell and Hill to hold without being destroyed. It requires the forest to do exactly what forests do to large armies: blind them, slow them, break them into fragments. But it is the only plan Lee can afford. He is out of safer options. He is out of the kind of resources that allow generals to fight cautious, methodical wars. He will have to gamble with the Wilderness itself as his most important weapon. On May 4th, Union cavalry splashes across the Rapidan at Germanna Ford in long blue columns, horses chest-deep in the brown water, engineers laying pontoon bridges against the current. The Army of the Potomac is moving south at a speed Lee had not quite anticipated. Grant is pushing his men hard, trying to clear the Wilderness before Confederate forces can react. But Lee has already reacted. His scouts are watching from the south bank. His courier riders are already galloping down the Plank Road and the Turnpike. The Confederate Army is stirring, pulling on the butternut gray coats and slouch hats that have become, after 3 years, as much a part of these men as their own skin. May 5th comes in hot for early spring, the kind of heat that makes wool uniforms into instruments of slow punishment. Ewell's 2nd Corps marches east on the Orange Turnpike in a long gray column, the men stepping around each other's heels in the familiar rhythm of the campaign march. Rifles slung, haversacks bouncing against their hips. 3 miles to the south, Hill's 3rd Corps is moving on the parallel Plank Road. Between them stretches miles of impenetrable forest, scrub oak and pine so thick a man cannot see 10 yards into it. If the Union Army realizes Lee has divided his forces, if Grant sends a corps crashing through that gap, it is over. But Lee is betting that the Wilderness makes that kind of coordinated attack impossible. He is betting the forest. At midday on May 5th, General Gouverneur Nork Warren's 5th Corps emerges from the trees onto Saunders Field, an open patch of Virginia farmland on the Orange Turnpike, and runs directly into Ewell's waiting men. Warren is stunned. He has not expected organized Confederate resistance this deep in the forest, has not expected Ewell to have his men dug in with clear fields of fire across the open ground. The Union advance surges forward across Saunders Field, and the Confederate artillery opens up, 12-pound Napoleons firing double canister, each round a tin can packed with iron balls that shreds through advancing infantry like grape shot through wet paper. Warren's attack breaks apart on Ewell's prepared position. Bodies lie thick across the open ground. The Union advance stops cold, and the first day of the Wilderness has begun in the worst possible way for Grant. 3 miles south on the Plank Road, the other fight is developing. Hill's men are racing to seize the Brock Road, a critical north-south corridor through the forest. If Hill can reach the Brock Road before Hancock does, he cuts the Union Army in half. But Hancock's men are moving fast, guided by courier riders and the sound of gunfire, and George Getty's division from Sedgwick's 6th Corps reaches the intersection just as Hill's lead brigades appear through the trees. They collide in what becomes the characteristic fight of the Wilderness. Confused, close range, brutal, fought with Springfield rifled muskets at distances of 50 yards, sometimes less, where the Minié ball's accuracy at 400 yards is irrelevant and only volume of fire matters. Getty's men dig in. Hancock brings his full corps forward. By nightfall, the Union line on the Plank Road is holding, barely, and Hill's exhausted 3rd Corps is leaning into it without breaking through. Lee assesses what he has at dusk on May 5th. Ewell has stopped Warren. Hill is engaged, but not victorious. And Longstreet is still not here. His corps is still on the road from Gordonsville, still moving through the Virginia night with the kind of deliberate speed that Longstreet always preferred. Not slow, never slow, but precise, conserving energy, making sure his men arrive in condition to fight rather than in condition to collapse. Lee sends word along the plank road. Don't entrench tonight. Longstreet will be here by dawn. Let the men rest. Prepare to attack in the morning with fresh forces alongside Longstreet's corps. It is a reasonable order. It is also, in the cold accounting of the battlefield historian, the single most catastrophic decision of the campaign, because Hancock is not going to wait for morning. Before dawn on May 6th, the forest around the Orange Plank Road is alive with the soft sounds of an army preparing to attack. Hancock has 20,000 men, the 2nd Corps, the unit that broke Pickett's charge at Gettysburg, the finest offensive fighting formation in the Army of the Potomac, and he is going to throw all of them at Hill's unentrenched, exhausted 3rd Corps at first light. His brigade commanders have their orders. His artillery has been positioned as close to the road as the forest will allow. His men have eaten whatever hardtack and salt pork they carried and have checked the nipples on their rifled muskets in the darkness, and they are ready. At dawn, Hancock attacks. The roar that rises from the Orange Plank Road corridor is unlike anything the Wilderness has heard in 2 days of fighting. A continuous, unbroken wall of musketry that the men in Lee's rear guard described later as something that seemed to move through the ground itself, a vibration they felt in their boots before they heard it with their ears. Hill's men fight. They fight with the desperate courage that is the particular quality of soldiers who know they are outmatched and have nowhere to fall back to. They throw back the first wave. They hold against the second. The butternuts and the homespun gray of the 3rd Corps give ground only inches at a time. But Hancock is relentless in the particular way that professional soldiers learn to be relentless. Not angry, not passionate, simply methodical, feeding regiments into the fight the way a man feeds wood into a furnace, one piece at a time, maintaining the temperature. Within an hour, Hill's line begins to crack. Regiments that have held since before sunrise start to lose their shape, their cohesion, the invisible web of trust and discipline that makes a regiment more than a crowd of armed men. Officers are screaming, flags are going down, men are running backward through the forest, and other men, seeing them run, begin to run themselves, and the collapse spreads like fire through dry grass, jumping from regiment to regiment until the entire Confederate center is streaming back down the plank road. Hill himself is on horseback in the chaos, riding into the flood of retreating men, shouting, grabbing at arms and sleeves and coat collars, trying by sheer force of will to stop what cannot be stopped. It is no use. The 3rd Corps is in full rout, and for one terrible, glorious moment, Hancock's breakthrough is real. Through the sulfur-thick morning smoke of the plank road, something appears. It comes from the west, marching east, and what it means, is the entire campaign folded into a single image. Longstreet's 1st Corps has arrived. The Texas Brigade, 800 men under General John Gregg, is moving at the double quick toward the sound of the guns. These are fresh troops. They have eaten, they have slept. Their rifles are loaded and their cartridge boxes are full, and they have not yet fired a single shot in this battle. And they are walking directly into the gap in Hill's broken line like a hand reaching into a wound. 800 men against 20,000. It is not enough to stop Hancock. It was never going to be enough to stop Hancock, but it is enough to buy 15 minutes, and 15 minutes is all Longstreet needs. Lee sees the Texas Brigade moving up. He sees the moment for what it is, the hinge point, the fulcrum, the single minute on which the rest of the battle will balance. He rides forward on Traveler, that gray horse that has become as famous as his rider, and the soldiers of the Texas Brigade recognize him. They see Robert E. Lee himself, the commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, riding forward with them, riding into the same fire they are riding into, and then something remarkable happens. These men who have marched all night and are about to throw themselves against a Union corps of 20,000, they stop. They grab Traveler's reins. They shout at the man who has asked everything of them for 3 years. General Lee, go back. General Lee, go back. Men press around the horse. Hands reach for the bridle. Voices rise in the Virginia morning, ragged and urgent and unmistakably clear. We will not fight if you are here. You must go back. Lee resists for a moment. He looks at them, these men who are bleeding and burning and still somehow standing, and something in his face changes. He turns traveler. He rides back. The Lost Cause will tell you that Robert E. Lee was invincible in the wilderness, that he nearly destroyed Grant's army through superior generalship. That is the mythology. The truth is more complicated and more human and far more devastating. The truth is that Lee was trying to run a war with machinery that was already breaking down around him. Longstreet takes command of the situation with the cold precision that made him Lee's indispensable man. The General Lee called his old war horse, the one officer he trusted with his most complex tactical assignments. Moving through the forest with an engineer's eye, Longstreet identifies an unfinished railroad grade cutting through the trees parallel to the plank road. It is not on most Union maps. It is cleared ground, wide enough for troops to move in formation, hidden from Hancock's advancing columns by the dense forest. Longstreet sends 4 brigades down this hidden corridor, 4 brigades moving silently through the trees while Hancock's men are still pressing forward, still believing they are pushing through a collapsing Confederate line. At 11 in the morning, Longstreet's flank attack emerges from the forest on the left of Hancock's advancing corps. The impact is catastrophic for the Union advance. Hancock's soldiers describe it in letters home as a wall of fire that appeared from nowhere, as being ambushed by an army that materialized from the trees themselves. The advancing Union columns, which moments before seemed about to split Lee's army permanently in half, are suddenly caught between fire from their front and fire from their left. The momentum reverses. Units that were advancing are now retreating. Officers who were shouting forward are now trying desperately to establish a defensive line in forest so thick they cannot see their own flanks. Hancock's breakthrough evaporates like morning mist on the Rapidan. It had been real. It had been, for one extraordinary hour, the closest Grant would come to a decisive battlefield victory in the entire Overland campaign. And now it is gone, rolled up by Longstreet's flanking columns as efficiently as if it had never happened. Lee, watching from the plank road, sees the tide turning. He has been here before, at Chancellorsville on this same Virginia ground, and he knows what a flanking attack in motion looks like when it is working, when the geometry of battle is aligning in the attacker's favor. Longstreet is pursuing. Hancock is retreating. The momentum that began at dawn with the collapse of Hill's corps has reversed completely in less than 2 hours, and now the Confederate Army has the initiative. Lee can feel it. The breakthrough is within reach. Then the shots come. From the south side of the Orange Plank Road, from timber so dense that a man 10 yards inside it is invisible, Confederate rifles open fire on a column of horsemen moving through the trees. The soldiers who fire believe they are shooting at Union cavalry. They are wrong. The horsemen they are shooting at are James Longstreet and his staff. A Minié ball, that conical lead projectile that a properly charged Springfield rifle can send through 2 inches of solid oak, passes through Longstreet's neck and right shoulder. He reels in the saddle. Blood pours from the wound with the terrifying speed of arterial damage. His aides grab him. Longstreet, even as he is going down, manages to snap at a hovering staffer. "Shut up, Perry," a man refusing, even in the moment of his destruction, to show weakness. It is the same spot, the same stretch of Virginia forest where Stonewall Jackson was shot by his own men 12 months earlier, almost to the day. The wilderness consumes Confederate generals the way it consumes everything else, without drama, without meaning, with the blind indifference of a fire that burns whatever is in front of it. Longstreet is carried to the rear. The pursuit stops. Richard H. Anderson, a capable officer who has never been tested at this level, takes command of the 1st Corps. Anderson does not have Longstreet's ability to read a battle from horseback, to sense the moment when an advantage must be pressed before it disappears, to make the ruthless calculation between what is risky and what is necessary. With Longstreet down, the Confederate attack along the plank road loses its shape, its momentum, the invisible force that had been driving it forward. The breakthrough is still theoretically possible. The Union lines are still disordered. Hancock's men are still retreating. But Confederate momentum has broken, and momentum, in a forest where men cannot see 50 yards in any direction, is almost everything. Lee, understanding that the plank road attack has lost its force, looks north. He has another option. He has been looking at it all day, receiving reports from a general who is perhaps the most aggressive division commander in the entire Army of Northern Virginia. a man named John B. Gordon, who has been watching the Union right flank all day with the particular intensity of a soldier who sees something that other men are missing. Gordon's report is simple and extraordinary. The Union 6th Corps under John Sedgwick is positioned on the right of the Union line north of the Orange Turnpike. Its flank, its right flank, is in the air, unanchored, unprotected. Gordon has ridden the length of the Union line, as close as the forest would allow, and he has found what every attacking general prays for, an exposed flank with nothing behind it. He has been pressing Ewell all day to let him attack. Ewell has hesitated, waiting for explicit authorization from Lee, uncertain of the larger plan, cautious in the way that men become cautious when they have lost a leg and nearly lost their nerve at Gettysburg the previous summer. This is the thing the Lost Cause mythology will never fully acknowledge about Richard Ewell. He is not Thomas Jonathan Jackson. Jackson would have attacked without permission, on his own initiative, trusting that Lee's overall plan could absorb an aggressive subordinate's unilateral decision. Ewell is not that man. He never was, and no amount of grief for Jackson can make him into what Jackson was. So the hours pass, and the opportunity narrows, and Gordon continues to press, and Ewell continues to hesitate. At 4 in the afternoon, with shadows beginning to lengthen across the forest floor and the light going amber in the way of spring evenings in Virginia, Lee finally authorizes Ewell to attack the Union right. Gordon's division goes forward. The assault hits the 6th Corps like something falling from the sky. Union soldiers who have been in position all day, tired and hungry, and thinking about nightfall, suddenly hear the rebel yell rising from the tree line to their right. That rising, keening, inhuman sound that veterans of the Eastern campaigns describe as something that could make a brave man's knees go weak even after years of hearing it. Gordon's men come out of the forest at full speed. The Confederate attack crashes into Sedgwick's 6th Corps with the force of soldiers who have been waiting all day for this moment, and for 20 minutes the Union right flank teeters on the edge of collapse. 2 Union generals, James Wadsworth and Alexander Hayes, go down in the chaos, wounded and killed. Confederate regiments seize Union guns. Nearly 2,500 Union prisoners are taken in the confusion. The 6th Alabama, already decimated by 2 days of fighting, loses 66% of its remaining strength pressing the attack, and keeps pressing. The Confederate breakthrough on the northern flank is real, and it is happening at the exact moment that darkness is making further maneuvering impossible. But Gordon is alone. The other divisions of Ewell's corps, which should be advancing in coordination, which should be rolling the Union flank back toward the Rapidan in a coordinated assault that multiplies Gordon's courage into something decisive, they are not moving. Ewell has not coordinated a multi-division attack. He has authorized Gordon's division to attack, and Gordon's division is attacking, and it is not enough. A single division against a full corps is courage without sufficient weight, brilliance without sufficient force. Union reserves come forward. Sedgwick brings batteries into position. The forest that has protected Gordon's approach now channels the retreat of his men as Union guns find ranges and open fire. By full dark, Gordon's attack has sputtered out. His men are still in contact with the Union line, still fighting in small, desperate knots through the trees. But the breakthrough is gone. Darkness falls over the wilderness of Virginia, and with it the last Confederate opportunity of May 6, 1864. By nightfall, the Battle of the Wilderness has reached its brutal arithmetic. Union casualties, approximately 17,666 men killed, wounded, or missing. Confederate casualties, approximately 11,033. Nearly 30,000 men in 48 hours, and the forest is still burning. The screams of wounded men trapped in the fires carry through the tree line to soldiers on both sides who cannot reach them, cannot save them, can only listen. Nearly 200 soldiers from both armies die in those fires, their remains later unidentifiable in the charred Virginia clay. The smell of burning wool and burning flesh drifts over Confederate and Union positions alike, and no one who experiences it ever fully describes it in their letters home, because there are no words in the American vocabulary of 1864 that contain that particular truth. The Lost Cause will tell you that Lee nearly destroyed Grant at the Wilderness, that divine providence or bad luck or Yankee numbers alone saved the Army of the Potomac from annihilation. That is the lie. or at least the oversimplification. The truth is that 5 men, each brilliant in his way, each capable of the precise thing Lee's plan required of him, failed at precisely the wrong moment for reasons that had nothing to do with Grant's numbers or Grant's luck. Ewell's failure was the failure of a man trying to replace someone who cannot be replaced. He was not cowardly. No one who commanded a Confederate corps for 2 years was a coward. But he was not Jackson. He waited for orders when orders could not arrive in time. He hesitated at Cemetery Hill the previous summer at Gettysburg, when an attack at dusk might have taken the high ground before Meade could consolidate his position. He hesitated at the Wilderness when Gordon was showing him the open flank. By the time Lee's authorization reached him, precious hours had been lost, and Union reserves had begun shifting into the threatened area. The timing that Gordon needed, the surprise that his perfectly identified vulnerability required, was already dissolving. Hill's failure was the failure of a sick man carrying a responsibility that was already consuming him. Ambrose Powell Hill was a magnificent division commander who had been promoted to corps command and found the weight of it genuinely beyond him. Not in terms of courage, never in terms of courage, but in terms of the administrative and operational capacity that separates a division commander from a corps commander. His chronic illness, the prostate condition that would ultimately kill him before the war ended, was already evident in his decision-making. He told his men not to entrench. Longstreet would be here by dawn. Let the men rest. That decision, that single choice on the night of May 5th, cost the Confederate Army the entire following morning. When Hancock attacked at dawn, Hill's men had no prepared positions. They had no breastworks of logs and mud to fall back to. They had no fortified line to anchor their resistance. They were tired soldiers in an open forest, and Hancock's 20,000 swept over them like a tide over sand. Longstreet arrived exactly when he needed to arrive, and then was shot by his own men in the same forest where Jackson died the same way a year before. There is something in that fact that resists easy analysis. It is not coincidence exactly, but it is also not explicable as simple military error. The Wilderness killed Confederate generals the way it killed common soldiers, blindly, without respect for rank or brilliance, through the simple, terrible mechanism of men firing into smoke at shapes they could not properly see. Without Longstreet, the First Corps lost its purpose. A corps without Longstreet was not the same instrument. It had his men and his organization, but it did not have his presence, his ability to sense the moment and exploit it before the window closed. Anderson was capable. Anderson was not Longstreet. Gordon was the closest thing to a successful outcome that May 6th produced. His attack was brilliantly timed, precisely executed, and nearly catastrophic for the Union right flank. In another battle, with another corps commander willing to commit multiple divisions simultaneously, Gordon's assault becomes the pivot point around which the entire engagement turns. But Gordon was one man with one division fighting one corps' battle, and the army that should have been fighting around him was standing still while he bled. His bravery was extraordinary. It was not sufficient. And Lee himself, Lee, who designed a plan that was genuinely masterful, who read Grant's movements before they happened, who understood that the Wilderness was the only ground in Virginia where 61,000 men could reasonably contest 100,000. Lee was trying to fight the war with officers who were not the officers he had built his reputation with. Jackson was dead. Longstreet was wounded. Stuart would be dead within a week, killed at Yellow Tavern by Sheridan's cavalry. The Army of Northern Virginia in May 1864 was carrying 3 years of accumulated loss in its officer corps, and no tactical genius can compensate for the systematic destruction of the men who carry tactics from intention to execution. Lee was building intricate clockwork with broken gears. On the morning of May 7, 1864, something happens that shakes the Confederate Army to its foundations. Grant's men do not retreat. Every Union army that has fought Lee in Virginia has retreated after taking significant losses. McClellan after the 7 days, Burnside after Fredericksburg, Hooker after Chancellorsville. It is the expected thing. It is what Lee's entire strategy is built on. Hit Grant hard, hurt Grant badly, and wait for him to take his bleeding army back across the Rappahannock to regroup and try again in a few weeks. Instead, Grant turned south. The Army of the Potomac, its dead not yet buried, its wounded still being collected from the forest floor, its survivors wearing the hollow-eyed look of men who have been inside something too large to fully comprehend. This army turns its face toward Spotsylvania Courthouse and marches south. Grant sits his horse at the intersection of the Brock Road and the Plank Road, chewing a cigar that has gone cold, watching his army go past him. His uniform is stained. His face shows 2 days of beard and no sleep, and the particular compression around the eyes of a man who has been computing casualties with the part of his mind that never stops. When a reporter asks him to send a message to the president, Grant reportedly says simply, "Whatever happens, there will be no turning back." 5 words that contain the entire trajectory of the rest of the war. Whatever happens, there will be no turning back. Lincoln has been waiting 3 years for a general who would say those 5 words and mean them. The soldiers who march past Grant that morning, battered and blood-stained and exhausted, when they realize they are marching south and not north, when they understand that their general intends to continue toward Richmond rather than retreat to Washington, something happens to them. Men who have been silent begin to cheer. Officers who have not smiled in 2 days begin to smile. The Army of the Potomac, for perhaps the first time in its existence, believes it is going to win. The counterfactual haunts historians who have spent careers with these documents and these maps. If Longstreet had not been shot, if Ewell had attacked at noon instead of 4 in the afternoon, if Hill had ordered his men to dig even shallow rifle pits on the night of May 5th, if Gordon's attack had been coordinated with 2 or 3 additional divisions instead of left as a single division assault, any one of these changes might have produced a different outcome. The Confederate breakthrough on the Plank Road, which was real and which nearly succeeded, might have been completed. Hancock's Corps, which was the fighting heart of Grant's army, might have been destroyed. Grant might have faced the same crisis at the Wilderness that every Union general before him had faced. The moment when the arithmetic of the battle made retreat seem not just prudent, but necessary. If that had happened, if Grant had been broken in the Wilderness in May 1864, the war might have taken a shape we can barely imagine. Lincoln's re-election campaign in November 1864 was already vulnerable, already under pressure from the Peace Democrats who argued that the Union could not win this war, that the cost in blood and treasure was already beyond any reasonable calculation. A Grant defeat in the Wilderness, a retreat across the Rapidan, another summer of military stalemate. It might have been enough. It might have been the argument that Northern war weariness needed to demand a negotiated peace, a preserved Confederacy, a nation permanently divided, and the institution of slavery still intact across the South. But Grant did not retreat. And the reason he did not retreat is not simply that he was brave or stubborn or indifferent to casualties, though he was all 3. The deeper reason is that the 5 Confederate generals at the Wilderness, despite everything they brought to those 2 days of fighting, could not deliver the decisive blow that Lee's plan required. They came extraordinarily close. The margin was measured in a single bullet, in a few hours of hesitation, in a decision not to dig rifle pits on a May evening in Virginia. The margin was so small that for generations afterward, Confederate veterans would argue that they had been robbed. By fate, by circumstance, by the particular cruelty of a war that seemed to kill the best men at the worst moments. From the Wilderness, Grant moved to Spotsylvania and bled 12,000 more men against Lee's entrenched positions. Then to the North Anna River, then to Cold Harbor, where on June 3rd, he ordered a frontal assault that cost 7,000 Union casualties in 20 minutes. A decision he would later describe in his memoirs as one he always regretted. But he did not retreat. From Cold Harbor, the Army of the Potomac crossed the James River in a crossing of military engineering so audacious that Lee briefly lost track of where Grant had gone and settled in for the siege of Petersburg that would last 9 months and drain the last strength from the Army of Northern Virginia. The Lost Cause mythology that grew up after the war insists that Lee was beaten only by numbers, only by the North's overwhelming industrial and demographic advantage, only by the monstrous calculus of Grant's willingness to spend Union lives. There is truth in that argument, but it is not the whole truth, and the Wilderness is where the rest of the truth lives. The rest of the truth is that the Confederate army that fought at the Wilderness was already a diminished thing. Not in courage, never in courage, but in the accumulated irreplaceable loss of the officers who had made it great. Jackson was in the ground at Lexington. Stuart would be in the ground within a week. Longstreet was being carried to a field hospital with a bullet in his neck, unconscious, his blood on the leaves of the Virginia forest. The Army of Northern Virginia was fighting its war with broken tools and the memory of what those tools had once been able to do. Lee understood this. In the days after the battle, in letters to officers, and in the quiet of his own headquarters, he returned to the grief he had been carrying since Chancellorsville. "I have lost my old war horse," he said of Longstreet, echoing the phrase he had used for Jackson the previous year. The repetition was not coincidence. It was the sound of a man who understands exactly what he is losing, who can see with perfect clarity the gap between what his army is and what it needs to be, and who has no way to close that gap because the men who could close it are dead or wounded or aging out of the capacity for the kind of aggressive action the moment required. The Wilderness was the last real opportunity, not the last battle. There would be more battles, months of them. The grinding siege of Petersburg and the final collapse at Appomattox Courthouse, where Lee would surrender the remnant of his army on a Sunday morning in April 1865, with Grant sitting across from him in a farmhouse parlor, both of them mud-stained and exhausted, the war finally arriving at the only end it was ever truly going to reach. But the Wilderness was the last moment when the outcome felt genuinely uncertain, when 5 Confederate generals standing at the right place at the right time with the right plan might have changed the direction of the war and the fate of the nation. They did not change it. They came so close that the distance between what happened and what might have happened is measured in a single Minié ball and a few hours on a May afternoon, in that narrow margin, in the smoke and fire of a Virginia forest, in the gap between Ewell's hesitation and Gordon's charge, in the distance between Longstreet arriving and Longstreet falling, lies the most devastating truth of the entire Civil War. The Confederacy was not beaten at the Wilderness by a better army. It was beaten by the slow accumulation of all the losses that had come before, by the way 3 years of fighting had consumed the very men who could have made Lee's vision real. Grant did not have to be invincible. He only had to survive. And survival, it turned out, was the one thing 5 Confederate generals at a crossroads in Virginia could not prevent.